Rachael Moore on music.
Yeah.
Star Michael Shannon. And star Jessica Chastain. Sure. Hey. Nice to see you. I love this show. I love your performances. Love the music. It's just such an extraordinary production. Jessica, I'll start with you. You both talked about the process, really, of preparing for these parts and how demanding it was. I'm curious for you, both of you, actually, the moments when you wanted to do this. I mean, you could do it. You what it'd be to come to this.
I never felt like this is something I could do. I knew that it was something I wanted to try, but it was definitely very, very scary. And when I started the process, I just assumed, because most things are, that with the lip sync and into that. And then when Mike came on, he was really adamant, and I think rightly so, that we do live singing on set. And that's why I really was like, oof, okay. That's when it became a whole a new process for me, much scarier. So it never got to be a thing of like, oh, I could do this. Like every day it was just trying to figure out how to not show everyone how scared I was.
It did not show. Michael, how about for you?
Well, we spent a lot of time rehearsing the singing before we actually started shooting. And we had a vocal coach named Ron Browning, who came to New York from Nashville to work with us. And we would rehearse our solo numbers, and then we'd rehearse our duets. And I felt like when we were rehearsing the duets and really figuring out how to harmonize together, that something kind of clicked for me, that made it feel like that it was going to work out. And it also kind of was a portal to the story itself, because I feel like that the times that they sing together are kind of their strongest communion with one another, and the songs kind of unravel and unlock the story of their lives, even though a lot of the songs weren't actually written by them, but they somehow managed to reflect the journey that they were on.
Yeah, there's so much story in the songs and the two of you singing together. What was the difference between, as you researching, preparing on your own and preparing together? Because it's the chemistry between you that I think makes this show.
Oh my gosh, well, I signed on to this, I think Josh Brolin approached me, I think it was 2011 at the Golden Globes. It was the first time I really had movies come out or anything, and the movie starts talking to me, and he's saying, you should play Tammy, Wynette. And that's kind of when the whole thing started. So for that decade, I was listening to her music and reading her books, and I was doing a lot of the work on my own, working with T-Bone in my living room and whatnot. And then when Mike came on and we started working with Grounding, everything just really made sense to me. I had never really harmonized with anyone. Mike has a history in music that I don't have. I just felt so protected and supported and like part of a team in a way that made me feel like I could do something that really scared me, but someone was going to be there with me at every step of the way. And so for me, it was a completely different experience when he came on, because it was the first time I felt grounded in something that I could understand.
Rachael, I'll bring you in. First, can you just sort of outline the scope of your work on this project and what exactly you were able to contribute to this? Because even just from what they're talking about, there's any noticing like a technical look at this.
Yes. Contact. They had to convince us that. Okay. So yeah, we recorded all the music first. I was there for that. And Abe and the director, John Halcote, came and were there for that. Abe was rewriting scenes as we were recording the music. This is before they sang on it. And, when we started finally just involving the music, it changed the show a little bit. He rewrote scenes, he wrote additional scenes, and it was really cool to see him as we were recording certain songs, he was going through and like making changes to scenes, and it really made the show real the second we started doing the music. And a few months later, we sent the music to them, they practiced it, and then they came to Nashville because we knew somewhat early on that we wanted them to sing on the set. There's a lot of risks involved in that. It's a lot more work, but we thought that people would ultimately connect more with them. And so we wanted a safety net, so they came to Nashville and recorded 2-3 rounds of each song, so there's 26 songs. So, but what that ended up doing was made them prepared for set. So we did that, and then this is all before filming was started. So then we went to set, and they sang while I'm on set. And I was also, it was really fun. My background is the recording industry. And I came to set and was kind of consulting on how to make these recording scenes look real. And I was training Billy Sherrill how to be a producer, which was really, really fun because Billy Sherrill and Lou Bradley are gods in Nashville. And I would tell my friends, I got to tell Billy Sherrill how to be a producer. But and we recreated, this Herald ground in Nashville, which is the Quonset hut from the ground up, which was incredible to see. But so I helped with that kind of thing. I helped them on set, and then post-production, putting it all together. So they sang live on set, and we didn't know how much we would be able to use from set, because we basically were just going to compare it to pre-records and see which is better. And they ended up, being prepared and ready for seeing live on set. We kept 95% of what they sang on set. So when you see these scenes, the mics are working and it's them singing in that scene. So that was, we were really happy for that at post-production. So all in all, I was involved about 2 years, pre-filming, post-production. Yeah. So, and then the soundtrack. Big deal.
A little high wire at for everything. One thing you brought up that I think is really true of the show is bringing that authenticity to these spaces. It feels really real. It feels like this world that they lived in. Michael, I'll go to you for the singing between you. You're talking about telling the story of these characters. Can you bring me into one moment, say, one song and what kind of character arc you were tracing in a scene, a sample song?
Oh dear, they're all so important. It's hard to isolate one. I guess one of the highlights for me, I'm not sure what episodes they played tonight, but no, for just the first one. So I guess in episode 5, we sing Two-Story House. And that's one that Tammy actually wrote. And it's an amazing song, and it really is so brutally honest about them and what they've been through. And she brings it to George when he's really at about as low as he got, and she's coming to try and pull him out of his own cesspool in a way. And then they go to the studio, and Tammy brings Georgette, and it's just fascinating to sing that song with Jess, knowing the story of what went into it, and it's so complex because there's so much trauma that's gone down, and yet at the same time it's such an act of connection and love between them, and it just really, that song really sticks out for me. Yeah.
You both worked together previously in Take Shelter. Jessica, what was it like uniting with Michael, especially for such a demanding and intense collaboration?
Well, it was amazing. I mean, it's what I said earlier. It really felt like I had a partner and someone who wanted the best for me and that was going to protect me, and the sense that we were going to do something really scary, but it was going to be okay because we were going to take care of each other the whole time. And so it really felt like, from the very first day of Lon Browning, who was our vocal coach, from Nashville. He moved to New York for a little bit, and we rehearsed every day with him before we even went to Nashville, Mike and I. But from the very first moment, we were learning these solos and singing these duets. It just felt like, okay, I know my way in now. And honestly, you don't know that necessarily that's going to be the case. We've known each other for such a long time, and we're dear friends, and have so much love for each other. You don't know when you come onto a project like this is so different than Take Shelter, these characters. But the great thing about it is I think that shared history is just felt on the screen in some way. I can't even imagine doing this with someone that I was meeting right before filming. I just don't think it would have been any good. So yeah, it's a real, every moment is so layered, and I think it comes from the amount of trust that we really have for each other. And also we're similar actors in that we're both incredibly obsessive. And we don't, we're okay to do more, to work all day, to do 20 takes, and we're not lazy. And I really respect, I'm very, very happy when I'm working with an actor who cares as much, if not more, than I do. And it takes a lot to care more than me about something I'm working on. And Mike's like that.
The origins of this are in a film, and I'm curious, in terms of the characterization, what the expanded room afforded you in playing Tammy, and particularly just the level of complexity you have to get into with her, and in what I felt was like a perfect length of this character.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing it as a film now. I mean, there's 30 songs. There's so much that happens. Well, I really felt it in episode 6. There's a scene where there's a flashback to episode 1. It's kind of mirrored. And the first time I saw it cut together, it made me incredibly emotional. And you realize something like that can only happen in a miniseries. It also, the way the production was scheduled, gave me time to lose weight. I mean, Tim, I don't want to give away spoilers from who haven't seen episode 6, but she has a rough go of it, and she changes a lot physically, and so I had to lose a lot of weight. And we had a wonderful hair and makeup team that helped us with that progression for the two of them. But to see that, to go on the journey with them, and to see their love story through all these chapters, and and to see that it kind of just was the constant in their lives, no matter what they were going through physically or emotionally, was so moving, and to do that in that 6-part series. So yeah, it even though it took over a decade, it happened the way it was supposed to.
Rachel, can you describe your relationship to George and Tammy, how you view their music and how you thought about adapting it, working for this story?
So, I live in Nashville. I certainly knew who they were. Certainly know I work in the music industry in Nashville, and it's actually pretty nerve-wracking because they're God's there. So big shoes to fill for them. We're all filming it. So but also everyone knows their songs. And so I think the goal was to make this sound timeless, to make it sound familiar, but also give it a somewhat fresh take on it. And we didn't overthink it too much. We just wanted it to sound like something that could play now for the people who have never heard it, and then also the people that they're very familiar with their music. It's going to sound familiar. I think we definitely did that because people who knew their music inside and out came up to me and said, that sounds like a fresh take. And so it was also true with them singing, in that, we didn't want them to do like impersonations or parodies of them. And so it was important that they insert themselves into these characters singing wise. And they did that. And what ended up happening was, did they sound exactly like George and Tammy? No, but they got respect from the country's music community because they were respectful about these characters and not about these people, and not, trying to just do a bad, impersonation of them. And so that was kind of true with the music and with the singing.
Michael, in your research, was there anything unique, maybe about yours, that up to kind of and something that didn't jump out to you immediately? So,
Well, I mean, I was kind of surprised to find out how much she was into design. He could have been an interior designer if he wasn't a country music legend. He was very into his houses and how things looked, and he about color and texture and all these things. He was just incredibly sensitive all around, not just as a singer, but just sensitive to every kind of sense, and yeah, I guess a lot of people, when I hear them talk about George Jones, they were very familiar with his kind of hard-living, tough persona, or the no-show Jones, the guy who doesn't even bother to show up for a concert, and just he's seen as kind of this badass dude or whatever. But I felt like there was a whole nother side of him that gets maybe less attention or doesn't come to mind as quickly, and it was just a very vulnerable, sensitive side to him. I mean, you don't sing like that without having a big heart, and so I was excited that I was excited to pursue that aspect of him, focus less on the other aspect.
Jessica, what about for you, Tammy? Anything surprising jump out in your research?
Oh, so much. I mean, when I first came onto this, I was confused about it. I mean, I knew in some sense Stand By Your Man. I thought, well, maybe that's a bad song for women because that's what I've read in the press, and there was that whole Hillary Clinton scandal, scandal, lots of scandals, but the quote where she says, I'm no Tammy Wynette standing by my man, and Tanya was like, why am I being brought into this? And so I had a lot of misconceptions to kind of pull through. I realized that, that song isn't about being with someone when it's not appropriate and it feels unhealthy. So you can love someone, you can forgive them, you can support them, you can love them for the rest of your life, but you don't have to sacrifice yourself for it. And she did. I mean, Timmy was married 5 times, so Stand By Your Man is not about him. So I had to kind of get through the feminist things that I had heard about whether or not it was good for women, and really get to know her. And what was so inspiring for me is she was a woman who showed up in the 1960s in Nashville, a divorced woman with 3 children basically on her hip, determined to make a name for herself in country music. And I mean, Nashville still is tough on women. That's why I'm so excited Rachel's doing her show, because it's a big deal. And I cannot say this loud enough more. And and I hope she has a long, long career in this industry because I think she's so talented. But I've been to award shows and all that. And I talked to a lot of country singers, and it's tough still. I can't even imagine what it must have been like in the 1960s. And the fact that this woman did all the things that she did, that's not a doormat. And that was really, really exciting for me to get to know and to read about. And I just loved her. Man, I love her so much.
For each of you to wrap, what is the story of this couple that you hope people that they take away that is beyond headlines or both you were talking about? And it gets at, I think that the contribution of this show is it's something really foreign and complicated and difficult at times. Rachel, you first.
The biggest takeaway I had is they are extremely relatable people. I mean, they were very flawed. They had a lot of things that I think a lot of people can relate to. They were so, I mean, I want to say no, they're wrong. They were, but this show really humanized them, and that was a big takeaway. And one thing that I took away that I really like about Tammy is, until she died, I believe, she renewed her beauty license. And which I so relate to that. Like, because she was this huge country singer, but until she died, right? Like, she renewed her beauty license every year just to have this back. And I think that's something.
Yep. Michael.
I mean, it's such a big story, it's hard to condense it to a sound bite, but I think as much as they went through and maybe as many, mistakes as they made, or at least as George made, I just really admire both of them. Like Jessica was saying about Tammy, their tenacity. They both came from very rough childhoods, and that's not uncommon in country music. A lot of performers do, but I think that they had tremendous strength. Even though they both succumbed to addiction and whatnot, they're just two of the strongest people I've ever come across, telling stories and whatnot. And I really came away with a lot of love and respect for George. And I can't imagine, there's stuff that you see in here where he's in a padded cell in a straitjacket, talking to a duck, and he went from that to getting his act together and getting clean and living out the rest of his life with some semblance of dignity, and that's just a monumental feat of strength and perseverance, and I think that could be inspiring for people to take away from the show, people that are struggling with similar issues.
That's maybe the next one.
Oh, the last word. That's too much pressure. I could just say, I guess the thing that inspired me about them and their story and them as artists, and I hope to follow, not completely in the footsteps, but this idea that they left themselves open to experiences, even when it didn't feel good. They really ran headfirst into their lives, and they shared it with others. I mean, there were moments, find Tammy on YouTube and all these performances where she's just like burying it all. And that to me is the most exciting thing about an artist who's willing to do that, who's willing to really go into the uncomfortable and dark and maybe unappealing and ugly nooks and crannies of who they are and share it. through their art, the longing and the loneliness and desire and the imperfections. And I find that to be really interesting as as someone who creates things. It hopefully, in some sense, emboldens me to do the same.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Folks, we like to see what we can take out of the appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I just